All right. Here we go. Let me put my readers on so I can read what I'm doing here. Welcome to the Great Old Ones channel. Here I talk about gaming and role playing games specifically. Well, I do like collectible card games. I have mentioned some of them in my some of my shorts or some of my videos. Um, but I like talking about role playing games a lot more. And tonight, since it's Thursday night, I'd like to talk about First Edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which happens to be my favorite role playing game of all of them. Um, so we'll get into our topic this evening. I thought we would talk about Manual of the Planes and a lot of that extra stuff that comes with that. So we'll get started on all of that stuff here, but let me first jump into the comments and see who we got. We have Dungeon Master D out there. We got DLSD underscore 25. 25 happens to be my favorite number. Joe Kaufman, John Collins. That's about it for so far. RPG's blocked. Okay, well, sorry. You'll have to put up with it. I would like to thank Dungeon Master D for being the first supporter I've ever had, as well as Joe K. Joe Kaufman there is also a supporter of mine. Thank you guys for having some confidence in me. Happy birthday, Howard Lovecraft. Ooh, I wasn't aware of that, but there we go. Howard Lovecraft. Howard Phillips Lovecraft wrote some amazing stories. Thank you for that there, Rabbit. We very much enjoy Howard Lovecraft stuff. I've got, in fact, I probably need to go back and read some more again. Right, let's see what else do we got here. Ooh. Of course, I have invited some guests along to discuss some of this stuff with me, but you know, we're all technically inept, so we'll give them a few minutes to get here. Let's see. What have we got there? Dungeon Master D, because it is divisible by 5, the true number, so saith the Illuminati. I don't know. It works for me. The reason I chose it happened to be a mistake. I chose 25 because I thought it was the number, jersey number for Tiger Williams for so long, and it wasn't. It was 22. If those of you that don't know hockey have no idea what I'm talking about, and you might as well block me now if you don't like hockey. So we go for that. Dr. John is here as well, so greetings, Total Micus. Excellent. Thanks, you guys, for hopping on in and joining me here in this little chat about First Edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It's not that late as Doom Sword fella. Yes, of course. You know, he's fashionably late. That's what he does. You know, it's got to make that grand entrance. He's got to let me sit up here for a few minutes and make me, you know, sound like an idiot. That way, when he joins in, the IQ level increases in the group. So we go from there. How about we get started on what I wanted to talk about? Gandalf syndrome. Regular fashionista. Could be, yeah. Well, I'm trying to do so myself with my Hawaiian shirts. You know, it's just my daughter absolutely hates them, so I wear them so that she can complain about it. What I wanted to start with was this piece right here. Ooh, hold on a moment. How about we do this? All right. Doom Swords, thanks for joining. Hold a minute, got to do it proper.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, sorry. The cat climbed all through this stuff that I tell it not to climb through. And of course, you know, it listens about as well as any cat. Knocked over the camera, unplugged all the stuff, it messed up the USB nightmare.
Of course, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
Well, it just the cats do what cats want to do.
They most certainly do.
Yeah, and well, other than mice, who I think really run this planet, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Cats, I think, follow along as a close second. Yeah.
Yes.
All righty. Hey, you got some fans out there, see?
Hey, how about that?
That's what I'm saying. All right, they all Joe Kaufman, a lot away. Yes, um, my to make it even worse, my kids were both born in Hawaii, and they don't like me wearing Hawaiian shirts. I don't know what the deal is, so they can tough it out. All right, what we were going to talk about tonight was Manual of Planes, but I wanted to start with the section that was in the Player's Handbook. That is a good. Let's see, when are you going to stay up late and join us in HQ Goo or Saturday game at the Parlor? I don't know. I think maybe they're not inviting me for a particular reason. It could be. I don't know. I don't want to embarrass them with my game mastering skills or something like that. No, I'm engaged with a lot of other things. Not just this. I do have a regular Saturday game. I am playing Pathfinder Second Edition, and there we go. We post it, right? Good. Dungeon Master D does a pretty good job of great storytelling with his Pathfinder game. I think it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun game to play with his storyteller with that. He's really good at that. Is Goo not a GOG? I don't know.
I believe that's a god of gaming.
I'm part of that god of game. I was invited there. They haven't kicked me out yet, so yeah.
They'll kick me out first.
Well, show up on time and you won't have anything to worry about. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into this here. The Appendix IV, Known Planes of Existence, page 120 in the Player's Handbook. Right. This is a great high-level overview of this. I think they just glossed over a lot of it real quick because they had plans on putting out more information on this, but they wanted to give something to start with for players to have some understanding and for game masters to jump in and at least get something seeds for their games and stuff and a good high level view of it. And this was a excellent 2 pages. Really, what this is an excellent 2 pages on a start for this. Right, it describes the known planes of existence as they've described them here, with your inner planes and then the outer planes. Now they've expanded on that in Manual of Planes and added more stuff to it, but for the most part, this is your entry level of it. And it just like anything else, when you start a project, you can't do nothing but add to it, and then sooner or later you got to cut yourself off and say it's good enough. But that's what the Manual Planes ended up coming out to be. Your inner planes, your prime material plane, which is most of your activity, is going to take place with your game, and then follows on to the other planes that are semi, I guess, attached to it, or at least close by. The way you get through to those other planes is through the ethereal plane. For all of your inner planes and stuff, and the Manual of Planes goes in a lot more detail about that. All it really tells you right here is about ethereal travel. A character can achieve ethereal state, various means which include magical ointment, oil of etherealness. Now, here's why I wanted to start with this. Anybody can pick up a oil of etherealness out of a dungeon treasure somewhere along the lines. Anybody from first level on through whatever. It could appear anywhere in any sort of horde or trouble. So you don't have to be a high level character to end up on the ethereal plane. So kind of like I wanted to start with this right here, just because of that. Ethereal travel is tireless and rapid. Creatures in the ethereal state need neither food, drink, rest, nor sleep. Right. Your referee is complete tables for encounters in the ethereal plane, as well as for movement other of the ether cyclone and its results. All that stuff is in the Dungeon Master's Guide for you. And then they detail in here, let me get over to my page. Right, they detail in here the outer planes, all the different outer planes that come across. And you'll notice A lot of these are related to alignment, which I think is a good point, and I think I've got Doom Swords will elaborate on that a little bit. Right, these are all related to alignment and stuff of that nature. Um, right, 25 of them. So there's that number 25 again. Why didn't they call the 25th plane the Illuminati plane, or would that have been plane 5, the elemental plane of fire? Right? Maybe they misnamed. They lost an opportunity right here. Yeah. But for those outer planes, the way you get to those is from astral travel. And you move between those. And it did a little description of astral travel and stuff like this. Now, here is where you're going to have to be a little bit of a higher level to be able to cast the astral travel spells necessary to get in and out of those. The Manual of the Planes goes into a lot more detail about astral travel and the hazards, the silver cord and stuff, as they say, and some guidance for dungeon masters who may want to run that. And ethereal and astral combat is just a brief overview in here about ethereal and astral combat. There's not much more in here other than just some guidelines. You know, certain magic weapons remain magical in either of these planes, but some will not. And the Manual of Planes actually goes into a lot more detail about that. And of course, as per usual, we have some fantastic art. Kind of gets your idea going right there on it. The next page in this, page 121, is just a diagram, a quick diagram of what these things look like. Now they've expanded on it a little bit in the Manual of the Planes and changed it up a little bit, but for the most part, things remain pretty much as these diagrams showed you. You've got your the known planes, the first set with your ethereal plane that kind of surrounds them and binds them all together and stuff. And then you've got the outer planes here with the astral plane, which is connected to all of them. Figure 1, the inner planes are all in there. And we notice they've got some nice little stylized things, 7 heavens, so there'll be 7 of those layers. The 9 hells have 9 little slots to them. The abyss, they couldn't possibly fit all 666 layers onto the page, so it kind of drifts off to near infinity down there. Pandemonium. That sounds like a fun place to go, right? Again, these are all tied to, if you will look back up here, your alignments and stuff to them. Like Plane of Olympus is absolute good, chaotics, right? Hades, the 3 glooms, they'd be absolute neutral, evil. Right, so those are the idea, the alignment, the faction that you could find existing on those particular planes. Ptolemachus, my favorite plane is the elemental plane of meat. Long story. I don't know. I could probably go for the elemental plane of meat as well, which should be close to the elemental plane of potatoes.
Yeah.
Some more excellent. I love talking to these guys because they throw some great comments and stuff out here. Right. The Last of the Gourd, the Rogue books, Come Endless Darkness is really good to read in order to catch a glimpse of how Gygax. Hey, okay. I have just read the first book of those. I should probably grab the rest of them and read them at some time. And hey, Yang, we got Yang hopping in. Hey, kids, has he looked at a picture of us? I don't know if he realizes or not. We're big kids at heart, I suppose. Greetings, Yang. Glad you could stop in and say hello to us. So there's what I wanted to start with, that particular page. Again, it's a high-level summary. There is not a whole lot of detail and stuff that you're going to get out of here. If this is all you got and you don't have anything else, you're going to have to make up a bunch of this stuff on your own if you've got players that wanted to head off in these directions. But this is your seed to get that sort of thing started. All right. After that, zoom all the way up to the top here, start with the first page in our Manual of the Planes. We had an introduction to the planes. Oh, I didn't put the cover of the book. Maybe I should have. All right. But we want to start out with this. Let me, of course, zoom in on it a little. Let me go. That's what I do with this. View, read mode. There we go. Should be a little better. All right. The term the planes encompasses the alternate levels of reality that may be encountered in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game. Planes are more than different part of the standard campaign or a different planet to adventure on. The many known planes have very different physical and magical laws than most adventurers are used to. These planes each have unique rewards as well as unique dangers. And this book will begin to help define some of those. Let's see. I see that YouTube is a lying liar of lyingness, saying that you're going to go live at 9 a.m. 15 minutes ago, but you're already live. Well, yeah, we did go live 17 minutes ago by my clock, I guess. But you're already lying at 9 a.m. Well, I can't do anything about the time zones. Sorry there, Jailback, but you know. Let's see. Joe Kaufman, of course. It would not be a night of ridicule from our audience if Joe Kaufman didn't kick out a pun. I guess it's mandatory, I believe. Yeah. So, concept of the planes has evolved in the time since creation of the AD&D game, right? That was the page right there out of the player's handbook. Will continue to evolve as long after this book goes to print. As the AD&D game universe currently stands, there are 5 basic groupings of the planes: prime material plane, the ethereal planes, the inner planes, the astral plane, and the outer planes. Then this book goes into giving you some detail, right? It still leaves you a whole lot of leeway for the dungeon master to go in and create things, make things up, and add this to the game and make it his own, right? Time zones, no, but can you do anything about the ridiculousness that is daylight savings time? Yes, we can all go to the ethereal plane where daylight savings time is meaningless. All right. Hopefully, we can get this government of ours to actually agree and get rid of spring forward and fall back, which is annoying. Let's see. I understand that YouTube doesn't update the video status on the feed, but I had just refreshed the feed, so it have been up to date. We would think, you know, can't rely on computers to be consistent or anything with anything, can we? All righty. So, organization. The book is divided into 4 sections, one for each of the other major groupings of planes: ethereal, inner, astral, and outer. Each of these sections is in turn divided into subsections. The subsections are based on the plane. Let's see, were the planes a real addition to D&D, or was it just a mess that camouflaged bad campaigns? Probably the answer to that question, Yang, is yes. A little bit of both. That's why I think part of it was made it in the player's handbook as an appendix, because it was something they were playing around with early on in D&D, and they wanted to standardize something. And then people got bored going here or there and said, hey, I want to try and travel over to this place. And, well, I don't have anything made up for it, but let's go ahead and get started. So you just stop me if there's anything in here that you want to go ahead and comment on. Survival. Upon reaching a particular plane, the next major concern is for the traveler's survival. Some of these planes are exceedingly hazardous and incompatible with life, for example. Such basics as air, food, and water, as well as the effects of the plane on time, gravity, sense of direction, hearing, and vision. That's one of the things in this book that they did, was expand on passage of time in each of the individual sections of planes and stuff, and how that took place, as well as what magic worked, how it worked, what didn't, that kind of thing. They went into a little more detail on that to help dungeon masters out. Right. Time is a constant in known planes of existence. It cannot be expanded, contracted, created, or destroyed. The length of a day in one plane is the same number as the length of a day in another plane. If a traveler leaves the prime material plane for the ethereal plane and spends 20 rounds in the ethereal, 20 rounds pass on the prime. All right, this is a type of time that's called true time. So, but the other thing, well, the time and perception of its passage do not vary from plane to plane. The effects of time on living objects do vary wildly. And it defines all that kind of stuff that's in here as well. So aging and things like this, which are a normal part of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, are expanded on in here in the various planes that you visit. Let's see, what do we got? Traditional depiction of the plane. So they've redrawn this kind of thing. The ethereal plane looks like it's just a blob. Right? And you've got the inner planes, the prime material plane. The ethereal plane is how you get to all of those. And that, or you go from the prime material into the astral to get to the other planes that are out there. Hard to put a picture to something that is supposed to be infinite, right? But they got to do what they got to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least they give you, sort of a better graphical design for this type of stuff. There's not a ton of illustrations in this book, being that it's pretty dense and packed full of information. But the drawings, they do have kind of clarify things. They might not be as flavorful as the original PHP stuff, but I still find them very useful.
Right. Let's see. True time versus subjective time in the planes. Right. Prime material planes, the two times are the same. Ethereal plane, 10 true rounds pass for every one subjective round. Right. So you're one subjective round on the ethereal plane, 10 rounds passed on the prime material. That's basically how they kind of set that up. So you have some idea of passage of time, or at least perception of passage of time on those other ones. And they went into some detail on all of this for you to help you out. See, what does he say? Go eyeball the elemental planes. They suck. Depends on what plane you're on. The elemental plane of vacuums would suck, right? I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, the positive and negative energy planes also suck.
Yeah. Not good places to go randomly visit without some sort of protection. Encounters, a large part of each plane's description includes possible encounters in that plane. General types of encounters and example encounter charts are included. So here's another book that has got a sample of how to set up an encounter chart. So if you didn't have Monster Manual 2, you could use the sample here to create encounter tables in any realm, really. All right. So here you go, right there on that table, for example. That's basically how you should set up an encounter chart. Now, of course, if you're going to do this on a particular plane, the monsters that you would plug in there would be monsters that you would find in that plane, not just anything randomly. But that's how you should set up your encounter chart. Right.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning this is the simplified encounter chart type of layout that they introduced in Monster Manual 2. So there's not a direct comparison between this and the percentile dice rolls that were in the appendix and the DMG, because they kind of changed things up for Monster Manual 2 to make it a little easier, with a 2d10 roll versus percentile. So it's a matter of preference, but I like the way this one and the MM2 one kind of lay out the frequencies of monster encounters and where you should put them in that list, which kind of aligns with the bell curve of, distribution for that generation, which is pretty neat.
Oh, yeah, it's excellent. Let's see. Schematic diagram of the planes here. They're talking about it. Combat, right? Combat includes melee combat and missile fire, as well as all non-magical harmful substances such as poisons, fire, and acid. Combat functions depend on the physical nature of the plane itself. Common tactics in the planes are covered in this section. So when you're reading about a particular section, and I believe if I remember right, you put in the elemental plane of water. We can talk about that a little bit if we get that far. Describes how combat and all that kind of stuff should take place on the elemental plane of water. Right. I would imagine, first off, it's going to be particularly wet, just saying.
Yeah, and Kevin Costner is going to be there.
Waterworld. Well, Waterworld was, I would say, would be a combination of elemental plane of water and the elemental plane of air, because there was breathable air.
Yes.
If you wanted to go that far. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds fun to be underwater. Not if you're an air breather. Just saying. Yeah. Yeah. So, and also the description of the different types of magic and how those types of magic perform on those particular planes. Here's a schematic diagram of the planes and ethereal, primaterial, astral, how to move around and how you can get from one to the other. Just a quick diagram that kind of gives an idea. A spell summary. Here's all the list of the different spells from the different books, and you give you some idea of what they are, and then we'll talk about specifically about certain ones in there. There's a whole huge list of all those things. Here's a description of the different spells. One of the things that I picked up on and I really like was a little more explanation of swords and miscellaneous weapons have their magical powers reduced the farther they are taken from their plane of origin. So your magic sword on the prime material plane is not quite so magic depending on how far away you get from the prime material plane. I like that description. I think that was a good addition and stuff into it. So low-level magic weapons lose their potency as you get further away. And then certain things like spell-like abilities and stuff like this that are talked about, armor and shields, all that stuff is described. Now, this is just an overview of what the individual sections would be describing in relation to these particular terms. Players' characters, right? This section covers all non-combat, non-spell casting character abilities and includes such things as thieving skills, like a paladin special abilities, relearning spells and advancement. All that kind of stuff is covered as to how you should handle that as a dungeon master on a particular plane. Ooh, we got Forno USA. Aha. Ferelius BTW. Oh, I would imagine he means by the way. No. Cool. Thanks for joining us and hopping in and listening to our rambling on about old books, because this one was issued in 1987, which was maybe even older. Well, I don't think it was older than any of our audience, probably, but older than a lot of people that play the game currently. All right. And then they include features such as special items of note or gods maybe that live there and that kind of thing to help with working on that one. I wanted to start with the ethereal plane again, of course, because the ethereal plane is the most likely one that player characters could visit first, or the one that they may end up being on more often. And a lot of the creatures that are on the prime material plane can get in and out of it fairly easily, like one of my favorite monsters. My favorite monster from the ethereal world is the Phase Spider. It's a fantastic monster. Again, we were talking about the other day when we were talking about certain monsters. I can't remember which one of our streams we've had, so many of them, where gaze attacks from certain monsters can go across into the ethereal plane. But if I remember right, it was the basilisk I think we were talking about specifically.
Yeah, yeah. The basilisk can do that. Even cockatrice's physical attack extends into the astral
can affect you on the ethereal plane. Yeah. Sure. And they went a little more in depth on just the ethereal. They talk about the ethereal, and then you got the border ethereal. If you think their description in here, your ethereal plane is like a vast open ocean that you can traverse across. Your border ethereal is the shoreline where you transition from one plane into the ethereal and back and forth. I like that description, kind of made a better picture of it for me. Right? There is, in the ethereal plane, you've got a sense of gravity, but there really is no up or down or anything like that. You can move in any direction you want with equal ability. and some description of how it looks like. Right, the first-time visitor deep within the plane might find himself completely surrounded by colorful mists, or in areas that resemble small towns on misty, fog-bound evenings. Which, here you go. If you want to, everybody seems to like Ravenloft. Bam! Here's how you get back and forth to Ravenloft. Me, I would cut it loose and send it off to the abyss. But other than that, here's an explanation of how you can get around from places outside alternative prime material locations or whatever, demi-planes and stuff, back and forth through the ethereal and then the border ethereal that borders them. One of the things I learned, an individual in the border ethereal is invisible to those in the bordering plane, although he can be detected from that plane by means of the detect etherealness or detect invisible spells. I didn't know that before until I read this, and I said, wow, I can find more use for the detect invisible spells now than would be before.
Yeah, definitely.
What do we got here? Blink spell has you winking between the material plane and the ethereal plane. Yeah, that's one of them. Right, so that makes you hard to hit because the weapons on prime plane can't affect you in the ethereal plane, but when you come back, they can. Yeah. Unless there is a weapon or device or something that's used against you that can penetrate to the ethereal plane. Then doesn't matter what's going on, you're had. Yeah. Let's see, what do we got? Temple of Elemental Eagle predates the manual of the planes and how I was introduced to the concept of elemental nodes and planar travel. Okay. One of these things is you guys all talk about a lot of modules and stuff. I didn't get to play a lot of those as a kid. I really didn't. We didn't have the money for any of that kind of stuff. All our worlds were made up worlds, and I'm enjoying it, going back in and reading through all of that stuff that I missed as a kid, and looking at all these modules and all this fun stuff. So I'll have to go back in and actually read Temple of Elemental Evil. My exposure to Temple of Elemental Evil was the computer game. Okay, I can't remember the year it came out. Was it 96 or something like that? It was based on 3.5 edition. And one of the most annoying things in there was the trip attack of opportunity. Oh, man. You go to that room full of bugbears and they're tripping everybody. Said, what the? But anyway, fireball.
Yeah.
All right. I've had some towns I've gone through in a blink. Shell. Of course. Don't blink, you'll miss it. We almost unmade reality in the Temple of Elemental Evil. Isn't that what they were doing with the CERN collider? Was trying to unmake reality? I don't know for sure. But anyway. Let's see. And hold everything and run the original Temple. You're so lucky to get to play it for the first time. Well, I played the video game, so I'm thoroughly familiar, unless they've absolutely changed the maps and everything from the module of the video game. I'm thoroughly familiar with it. I ran through that over and over and over again. I absolutely loved digging through there. It was a lot of fun. All right, so we got border ethereal, so how you can reach through, and then reaching the ethereal plane and the realms beyond it can be most easily reached via magical items such as oil of etherealness or armor of etherealness. Right, so these are things that a player character could pick up in a dungeon horde somewhere along the lines if you're out there digging through dungeon hordes. Not likely you're going to find it if you're just running through the woods, killing rabbits and deer. This is Dungeons and Dragons, not Fields and Fairies, right? But other than that, there are no specific spells designed to put a traveler into the ethereal plane, though several spells serve the function, right? Clerical plane shift can enable the target to enter the border ethereal, while the magic user vanish spell can send an object into deep ethereal. Right? So they're not specifically designed to get you in and out of it, but they can be used to do so. So let's see, what do we got here? More descriptions on the ethereal, how to get through it, items, things like this, how you can prevent the border ethereal from getting into places such as large amounts of like gold or lead or something like this to shield it. Heavy construction does it, blocks things from getting in and out. And on this page right here, alchemic mixture containing Gorgon's blood, and that, when mixed with the mortar of the building, prevents ethereal and astral creatures from passing through the walls. So there are ways to prevent ethereal creatures, or astral creatures in this case as well, from getting in and out of your stronghold. It's just going to cost you a lot of money to do so. Let's see, right? Dense metals. In the little part of this paragraph, they say, well, anybody that can do ethereal travel, this is how dwarves can actually go find large loads in their mines. It's just by traveling around, and when they get interrupted by something, hey, there's a heavy section of metal down here, and they can report it back to the rest of the group. So you can use this plane as part of your storytelling. Let's see, curtains. I love this curtain part of it too, how it looks, right? Unless bodily flung into the depths of the ethereal plane by a vanish spell or trying to enter a plane inside solid matter, traveler begins his sojourn in the ethereal at a curtain of vaporous color, and it lists your different colors in here on what they are, and what the color is, and where you're going to when you find that color. So that was a nice little addition of stuff in there too, something for the game master to use, right?
Yeah, and woe be to he who does not know the colors, and just picks one randomly.
Well, I want to know, by the description of the ethereal plane, how do you know that you've reached the negative material plane curtain? Because both things are black.
Right.
Right. And they did mention the one in here. Here's your passage of time, and they describe the passage of time and stuff that goes. Here's like a look at your graphical representation of what the ethereal plane is like. You can get to the planes with your borders, the curtain, and all that. I like the picture. It's a pretty good picture.
Yeah.
Trying to remember
I like that
what
too.
page it was on. Right. Here's the description of the environment and stuff while you're in it. Vision. The ethereal plane is a thick soup composed of ethereal matter, so that sight is limited as if looking through a dense fog. Clear vision extends about 100 yards, with murky shapes beyond. Encounter distances in the ethereal plane are 80 to 120 yards, though if one side has surprise, it may evade or lay an ambush for the others. Right? Bodies of beings on the plane are at the same temperature as their surroundings. Infravision does not function. Okay. Ultravision works normally. And they talk about movement, how you can move around and stuff. So really is irrelevant. There's nothing to push against. Right? You're just moving at will, however you want. What else we got here? The ethereal encounters. They list a bunch of encounters that you can get to on the ethereal plane and typical creatures. So that particular table that we saw, here it is right here. Right? And you could include these in your encounter table, but they don't make an encounter table a roll. You create it. And here's the monsters that you could possibly find, and there's their rarity that they list.
Yeah, and the notes in this table are worth mentioning, because that's one of the real values of the book. I mean, if you're into that type of thing, because, as the DM, you can obviously create it yourself or whatever. But this basically tells you which creatures is all condensed down, but which creatures are actually native to the various planes and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, like, you can see that the ghost with an N is native to the ethereal plane. Even though it has the ability, to cross to cross over, so to speak.
Right.
But it can also magic jar and swap with somebody and send them over to the ethereal.
Well, I think we need a good heckling on our choice of First Edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons as our game of choice. So if you don't mind, I'm going to bring in our first heckler. Welcome, Dungeon Delver Earth. Glad you could join us to our chat about Manual of the Plains this evening. Oh, looks like your voice is not coming through, though. No sound from you there, sir.
Yeah, I muted myself.
No, not you. From Dungeon Delver. I didn't hear him. Yep. And we weren't listening to you anyway, so. All right. Hop in at your leisure.
How's that?
Well, much better. Much better.
Okay. Yeah, I did. My microphone was set to Steam streaming. Like, yes, for all the streaming I've ever done on Steam, which is, I think, a grand total of 0 hours and 0 minutes. No, it's funny because I actually did a YouTube short about MOTP, WSG, and DSG today. When I interviewed Gary back in 2003, he was of the mind that those books were crypto 2E, that basically those three, like when you cross that line, you were playing second edition. And I mean, I personally think that whatever resources you drag into your game and hammer down into the into the pure metal that is first edition, it becomes first edition. Case in point, Gary wrote a quasi side quest for Lost Caverns of Sojkonth that was in the Slayer's Guide to Dragons. And it was basically you going to find Drulzna's, are you finding rather Drulzna's dragon that she had as an emergency out and fighting it. Except, he couldn't call it Drulzna and he couldn't, talk about the Lost Caverns and that sort of thing. But that is what it referred to. What this has to do with Manual of the Plains, Gary's opinion is that if this works for you in your 1E game, for God's sake, use it in your 1E game,
Absolutely. Yep.
But, I mean, as far as me, like, I don't know, I find a lot of it not particularly to my tastes. I just don't like the idea that there's such a cut and dried science to it,
Mm-hmm.
Like, here are these neatly defined lines of things, I don't know. I'm not saying it's a bad book or you're wrong to use it. Just something just doesn't sit with me. Plus, there's a couple of things about it that can kind of break, particularly if you have high level characters who can do things like either one of you guys ever play a first person shooter on your PC, like Quake, any era, and you turn on no clip and you pull back and you kind of orbit the map.
Yes.
and see into all the sections of the map. That to me is there's something. It's been years since I read it, but there's like a way you can per the book you can travel ethereally and see things, and I just don't want my players getting something, like even an oil of etherealness or something, and being able to no clip out of the map, as it were, in against the giants and go, oh, okay, well, there's giants over here, there's Rakshasa over there, there's these dark skinned elves over here. All right, so let's just make notes about where they are. So I that's just my hot take.
Sure. Well, I mean, as we've just made notes in here as we talked about it too, there are ways to counter some of that as well. Some of these monsters can see an ethereal and they go, hey, where do you think you're going?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got characters who like to use the oil of etherealness. They got it from somewhere else. Okay, you can have it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw phase spiders in my giants game.
That's certainly true. And I mean, it's kind of like, oh well, psionics are broken and so on and etc. When you introduce psionics into your 1E game, you use the psionic random encounter table. That's not just for people that have psionics. That's anything that's like psionics too, which includes cure light wounds. You could potentially have Asmodeus show up because you cast cure light wounds on somebody per the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's an edge case, but it can happen. So yeah, I mean, there's always ways for DMs to deal with things. It's one less hassle I got to deal with if I just say, nah, mine doesn't work.
Yeah, that's fine. To your point, use out of it what you like. Let the rest go. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you missed the original talk when I mentioned the page out of the player's handbook, Appendix 4.
Appendix 4. Let me have a look. See here.
Right here, page 120.
The known planes of existence. Yes.
Where you start. Now, this again was that high-level overview and stuff like this, and I liked how the only thing the manual of the planes actually expands on a lot of this stuff. And if you want to use it, fantastic, use it. Otherwise, you've got some brief notes right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think everybody's kind of on the same page there. You don't have to take the entirety of the thing. No. You can mine it for ideas, just like all the other Orange Spine books or, things like Deities and Demigods or Monster Manual 2 or Fiend Folio or whatever. You don't have to take it all, or you don't have to take any of it. It's up to the individual DM and stuff. And yeah, I wouldn't want my players, running around with their characters, doing the, hey, I'm going to go ethereal and find all this kind of stuff. So, you certainly need to exercise some caution in any rule you're going to bring into your game, right?
Oh, unquestionably. And, it's funny you bring up Deities and Demigods. There are DMs who would say, hey, I know you've got an 18 strength and you just, you found a Librum, or, you got 1800 strength and you found a manual of, what is it? A manual of bodily health. Is that the one?
No, the Poisoned Arms.
That's con, right?
Yeah. Bodily health gives you con. Yeah.
Yeah, bodily health gives you con. Well, let's say, you've got an 18 con. That's a little bit easier because there's no percentile constitution. So you go, okay, well, I'm sorry, Dooms, you got the book, you spent the time, you said your character was off doing what they were doing, reading the book, and you're running a different character, but it benefits you not at all. Sorry. When you could have sold it for the ridiculous amounts of money it's worth. But there's the Deities and Demigods, which handles scores 19 to 25. But there may be DMs who are like, no, my character stats are never going over 18. I'm not dealing with it.
Okay.
We're not doing that. But then Gary also said he thought that Deities and Demigods was the fourth of the 3 books, that it was a core rule book. So, but if you don't, that's up to you.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, hell, there's DMs that insist that AD&D is meant to be 3d6 down the line. and Gary flat out says, don't do that. Here's 4 perfectly good methods of character generation. Don't do 3d6 down the line. And their DMs are like, yo, you're absolutely going to do 3d6 down the line. So,
well, if you notice, there's a difference between the games, original Dungeons and Dragons and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Your ability scores is a difference between the two. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, if you do 3d6 down the line, nobody's going to be anything. It's it's like,
or not for long anyway.
Not for long, that's for sure.
We mentioned here about here's a sample encounter table that they put together for you that you could use for the ethereal encounters. I thought there was some good, useful information in here that you take it or leave it like you like, but there's some good stuff in here that you could bring into it. Now, you said there wasn't a whole lot of art, but there is some art. That kind of looks like an ethereal plane, doesn't it? Things go all over the place. Some shadowy looking city ahead of you.
Yeah, it's funny. There was speaking of art, I'm gonna pop something in here. Gary Gygax and Steve Marsh were actually working on a manual of the planes of their own, and this was in Dragon magazine. They teased a lot of stuff that was going to wind up being in it. Like, you were supposed to make like this hypercube to represent the planes. I don't even remember what issue it was in. I did I did do a YouTube short about it. But yeah, that right there was how you connected the planes. So yeah,
color curtains and everything that are there.
Yeah. Now, I feel like they were probably going in a different direction, and certainly TSR post Gygax, as acrimonious as that environment was, we're not going to say, "Oh, why don't we take some of Gary's notes and build the book around that?" That wasn't going to happen. But I just think that's a fascinating view there, and it doesn't do it justice. Yeah. The image grab from it, and honestly wish I had a physical copy of that. But
well, I don't know how well that would fold together, but I can figure something out. Create
I think you'd want to mount it on cardstock and then cut seams on it.
Okay, what plane did you land in? Roll the cube.
Yeah, exactly. To quote Money Burns, "Is it about my cube?"
Cool. Yeah, that's excellent. Thanks for bringing that with you.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Right. Pull that one off. Go back to this one again. Let's see. They talk about combat and ethereal plane. I like how they mentioned the difference in weapons. Your strength and dex bonus still apply as far as damage goes. Your dagger doesn't do anything because it's immaterial, but your dex and strength bonus actually add to your damage and stuff that you conduct, unless your sword is a +2, in which case it will work in the ethereal plane, right? So that was some good information. Whether you don't like the whole thing or not, I think that would be kind of cool and kind of handy to use that one. So your characters who think they're somebody might not be somebody on another place. Cyclone, the ether cyclone effects, I think that's pretty cool. But the only thing I think of when I hear this ether cyclone, it just makes me think to, if you're familiar with it, the Expanse RPG's got a thing they call the churn. It's just bad stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do we got here? I mean, just talk with you about it when you get to the weeds of it. I've come to love 1E the most. Haven't we all? Right. Joe asked a question here. How are you liking Doom's 1E game? Gunmaster D didn't get too far, but so far so good. Oh, are you letting them live? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of up to them. They've lived so far.
Talking about the poisons, all that kind of fun stuff. They give you some guidance in here to help you with that sort of thing. Spell casting, what spells can kind of work. I like to imagine here, all spells that create restraining devices such as web and wall of iron can be passed through by an opponent moving the ethereal matter out of the way. Those that inflict damage, such as blade barrier or wall of fire, will still harm the traveler. You can pass through, but you still get harmed, right? And they discuss recovery of clerical magical spells, conjuring, all the different types of magic and stuff that you can use, the different schools and how they work in the ethereal plane. I think this was an excellent guide on how to run this. Now, your player characters, They include some player characters in here that I would never use because of the book they came out of is not one of my favorite books. Unearthed Arcana, right? Barbarians and Cavaliers.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. But they explain how the character classes and the character classes' abilities and stuff work. And like Rangers lose their advantage on being surprised in the ethereal, but they retain their 3 and 6 chance to surprise others. Right? The shifting nature of the ethereal plane is such that all but the smallest traces are eliminated soon after passage. There is a minus 50% modifier to tracking attempts, which really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Is it outdoors? Is it indoors? How do you describe that as far as the ranger goes? Rangers are of sufficient level to learn druidical spells and may do so with limitations on druids, like they list here. So they kind of give you some hints on what to do with player characters that are in those environments, right? Monks. So monks really want to go to the ethereal plane to function, because in the ethereal, monks receive the strength and dexterity bonuses for armor class. Okay. But they don't get it normally, right?
That's wow.
Yeah. They turn out pretty bad in the ethereal, right? Half point damage, they keep that even if they do mundane weapons that don't do any damage, right? Ability to break a fall is unnecessary as falls do not occur. You can't fall in the ethereal plane. You're always kind of falling that way. So it covers it. And then they talk about the demi-planes in the ethereal. And this is a handy little extra bit. Now, they call about the demi-planes the different ones, but you may recall certain magical items produce demi-planes on their own things, right? For example, bag of holding.
Portable hole?
Portable hole, right. Those are demi-planes. Bag of devouring. Yeah, once it's digested all the edible parts, it will dump the treasure into another dimension somewhere. So handy stuff. So the demi-planes was a useful part of this. And I think Dooms wanted to mention something about the demi-planes because this is one of the things that he liked about it.
Yeah. Which part in particular? I'm trying to remember. So, sorry, what's that?
I guess you're trying to catch up. Oh, the demi-plane of imprisonment. There we go. You don't like?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think the demi-planes are kind of interesting. I mean, it depends on if you have, for a lot of these, not necessarily some of the outer planes or inner planes, because we know we have monsters for those. But the demi-planes can be kind of interesting especially if you're using monsters related to those things. So demi-plane of shadow starts to get in things like a shadow dragon, and some other creatures. And of course, they go through here, with the various creatures that are native to those planes. I haven't used a lot of the demi-planes, and that's something that, the way that I look at it would be something that you can include in your game or not include in your game, regard, depending on whether or not the characters are ever going to travel there or ever gain any information about it or whatever, because there's not a lot of the mainstream monsters and stuff that interface with that. So like, for example, demi-plane of imprisonment, they mention up there, it's only hinted at in the legends of those who are themselves legends, and then they've got a little lore story behind it. And anything that's a lore story, for the most part, obviously can be taken or left. But just above that, they talk about the shockers from Fiend Folio,
right?
With regard to the demi-plane of electricity,
electromagnetism, right? They give some of those weird monsters in the Fiend Folio, which I would hardly use any of them out of there, but they give them a place to exist.
Right, and kind of, I basically consider these to be sort of a way to explain sort of the scientific aspects of the fantasy world, right? And again, you don't necessarily need any of this, but it kind of explains concepts, in a fantasy world. It's basically the laws of physics, right? Except fantasized.
I'm like this from the standpoint if you've got players that want to do something different, right? We've got
Right.
some magic that can get us to some other places. Well, let's go to some other places. Well, here's some, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of help on setting that kind of stuff up. The inner planes right here was talking about reaching the inner planes. How you get through to them. Basically, you're passing through the ethereal to go back and forth to one of these. Right. And I think as far as that goes, the only one on here that would be the least hazardous out of all of them is the elemental plane of air. Because at least you could breathe. You might be falling forever, but there's nowhere to go. You can't fly.
Right.
I actually had a
you
party.
could be grabbed by an air elemental.
Yeah, I actually had a party line up and march in a row into the gate to the elemental plane of air in T1 to 4. And I was like, I mean, I guess technically I could just say your characters are all lost, roll up new characters. I kind of didn't want to. I was like, okay, they're all on a plane, more or less together. So I just picked it up and we went from there. And we had
Right.
we had a great adventure. I put a sky island inhabited by some evil cloud giants and just had a lot of fun with it for a few months until they were it just so happened that in a loot pile, I didn't dice for this, but they found a well of many worlds in the loot pile of a thing, and they were like, well, let's go through here. And they wanted to play the G series. So I said, well, it just so happens you're attuned to and pop out in Greyhawk again. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's the way to work it, right? Some little ideas as to what to do with it out of here, but take it and run with it.
Absolutely.
And they mentioned there's another one of those diagrams, how all this kind of stuff works. Some of this is just boggling to the mind. How is that supposed to really look other than on this 2-dimensional page, right?
Right. Yeah, and then there's some other ones we've got there, the smoke and ice and magma and ooze, which you need for the methods, basically. I mean, if you want to integrate them into some sort of type of planar existence,
right?
Then that's where those would exist.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about the survival on the inner planes, what the problems are that you may get to, those sorts of things. Movement. How do you move around in the general level of movement around in the inner planes? Right, ultravision, the vision that comes from reflected ultraviolet radiation, does not function in the inner planes. Okay, there's nothing producing the ultraviolet light, right?
Right.
So, bingo, there you go. And you had separated out some ideas of what to do for the inner planes and how to run combat on the inner planes and stuff like this. But it's a general overview of the inner planes themselves. But you had separated out, where's it at here? There we go, plane of elemental water. So I figure you pulled that one out as an example. You may have had some things on there that you'd wanted to mention.
Yeah, well, primarily it was the purpose behind that was to kind of show, because it's not readily apparent with the book being the way that it is and containing so much information. It's not readily apparent fully how it's structured. But I think that that's one thing that they did a really good job with, regardless of whether, you might be a fan of the content or not, is they really clearly spent a lot of time in organization of the book, which you didn't really find a whole lot of in TSR, late stage TSR era. It was more like rushed out. So I kind of get the feeling that the guys involved with this, Jeff Grubb and Kim Mohan and stuff, I really get the feeling that it was kind of a labor of love type of project.
Sure.
more than where they're sitting around. Yeah, we're done. We shipped that out. Don't worry about it, and they're still working on it. Because I like the organizational aspect. So basically, with each of the planes, they're similarly represented, right? Where they give you combat considerations, character class considerations, the way that the magic functions, the random encounter tables for the various monsters. Showing you which creatures are native to the various planes, and also which creatures might simply be passing through. And again, that goes back to that note. Now, it's worth mentioning that the interplanar creatures in the encounter table, nothing is really native to these except for elementals or pseudo or quasi elementals or whatever you would call them. Right. So you've got your elementals, you've got, and they do have some monster entries in Manual of the Planes as well. These Q elementals or whatever. But at least, I mean, when you're dealing with an air elemental, obviously it's native to the plane of air. But if you're dealing, or an aerial servant for that matter, but if you're dealing with a djinn, or a genie, you might not necessarily know that, or it doesn't really necessarily matter, but that it's directly associated with that plane and that it's native to that plane. So in this one, in the inner planes specifically, the note section is replaced with a home plane section, which is a letter designation indicating whether it's air, fire, the plane of magma. And they did actually introduce some additional elemental type planes, right? So they've got the air, earth, fire, water, smoke, ooze, ice, magma, dust, vacuum, salt, ash, radiance. And that goes back to sort of explaining the physical laws of the world in kind of, I don't know what you would say, a metaphysical sort of way. So if nothing else, this part, like I'm not going to use a Thaqua or a Sandman necessarily, or a Lava Kid from Fiendful, especially not a Lava Kid. We asked the sage, what's the name of this creature? That is known as the Lava Kid. I don't think I'm doing that.
No.
Yeah. But it's a interesting read, particularly if you care about any of that kind of stuff in your world to mine for ideas. Now, obviously, the actual elemental planes, those have a lot more utility in the game in general. Just for the simple fact that you have things like aerial servants, air elementals, water elementals, water weirds, earth elementals, fire elementals, and all that stuff.
You can summon an elemental that it doesn't have a description in the monster manual, right? It's X number of hit dice. Well, I don't see one in the monster manual that matches that. Make something up.
Yeah.
Right.
Personally, I think it's more onerous to have to deal with the pterodactyls. Wandering monster tables for Pleistocene era. It's a small pterodactyl. Gary, you have no entry for small pterodactyls anywhere in advanced D&D. It is nowhere. It's not in a module. It's not in the rules. It's not pulled from OD&D. It didn't show up in Dragon. What the hell, dude?
Right. But here we've got a book that creates planes for monsters that were added to the book where they had no place to put them. So.
Yeah. And that actually bothers me about the dinosaurs as an aside, is that it would be better off just as a template, I mean, I know he must have got fascinated, or probably was fascinated with dinosaurs like we all were back then. But, you've got to know that these dinosaur names are going to change over time. Now, maybe, the staying power of the game wasn't necessarily considered at that time, because who would have thought, hey, I'm writing these books and they'll be around 50 years later and all these dinosaurs are going to be renamed by scientists or whatever. But all those dinosaurs, they're all basically the same. So, you may as well just have a dinosaur type of template, that that you fill out, because there's nothing that says that that the dinosaurs in, say, the world of Greyhawk, and Medio or Hepmonaland or something need to match the actual physical examples of dinosaurs as we know them.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was one thing, because I don't think that's the only place where something like that weird comes up. When I was building the encounter charts for Familiar, I was like, I'm just going to have to alias this to what's in the monster manual. What I have in my monster database. So you roll, pterodactyl small. No, that's a pteranodon, because that's what I have the stats for. And I'm not gonna. The whole point behind the program is to make it easier on the DM, not, well, you rolled this, have fun creating one.
If anyone ever wants to really dig into the nuts and bolts of AD&D specifically, just try writing a program for it, or trying to standardize something, or categorize it, or classify it, into a standard taxonomy. You may as well, you'll find out.
Here's a good question here from Joe Kaufman. Did you guys see the monster manuals and Fiend Folio brought to life with AI? A guy on my Discord did it. It's the best use of AI I've seen yet. Yes, I saw those. Those were outstanding.
I have not. Now I want to go look.
Yep. Basically went through from A to Z in the monster manual and animated all of those things and stuff that were in there, to just, AI animations of them, of course. But it was really good. I loved it.
That sounds really cool. I definitely want to go look at that. Unfortunately, speaking of going, I have a live stream starting in about 15 minutes. So,
well, thanks for hopping on and giving us some input and stuff on all of this. Great. Always welcome to come back.
You're quite welcome. You're quite welcome. And by the way, Dooms, you should have been proud of your team, man. We finished the A series.
Oh, yeah. I caught a little of that. Yeah. That's great.
And I wish you could have been there, because this was the funniest way to see. Alan Hammock. I had asked Alan like years ago, hey, would you consider coming on and running a little slice of the game? And he did. And one of the newer players, Dave, like, just completely fanboy geeked out halfway through the game, because it dawned on him that he was playing with a guy that wrote the module. He's like, "Oh my God, you're Alan Hammock."
Yeah, and a guy who's responsible for way more than just writing the module, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's when I crashed with Alan, a couple of times now at EggCon and so on. It's like, man, I wish I could talk to somebody about such and such in the world of Greyhawk Folio. And he's like, hello, I edited it.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was just one of those names you always saw when you were a kid,
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, it has been a ton of fun, guys. I got to skedaddle. So
have a good one.
Thanks for coming in and joining us. Anytime.
Very welcome. I'll talk to y'all later.
Whenever you choose.
Peace.
Have a good one.
See ya.
All righty. Movement, the plane of water, and all that stuff was covered. Breathing, which would be fairly important if you're going to visit the elemental plane of water, because as air breathers, that since there is no air anywhere, right? And of course, we've got spells and stuff that can cover that kind of thing, right? But they mention that in here as to what would be useful items to have with you. How would you handle your senses and stuff? They went into detail on how you could interact with this sort of thing and how it plays out. They again, somebody mentioned earlier, you could see that it was a labor of love for them to go in and work on this thing. They went into detail on it for you to use if you wanted it.
Yeah, tremendous detail and organized detail, and this would be hard to organize and particularly daunting to, be tasked with editing, right? Now, there's so much here, and it's so tightly packed that you might never find a mistake in it, because of the way it is. I mean, you'd have to really dig into one of those things. But, this book's great for just reading as well.
Yeah.
Because you can mine a bunch of ideas out of it.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't have to use this book at all for anything. It's just if you don't want this stuff, doesn't exist, but you can pull a lot of ideas and all that kind of stuff out of it. Excellent. Just like anything else. Then the main point when Delver came on was use what you want. Forget the rest. It doesn't. None of this is required anywhere. Right? There's no such
Right.
thing in this game. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, how often are your characters really going to end up, in any of these planes? Not very often.
But it depends. If you've got a campaign that's going in this direction, and somehow or another your characters manage to get and acquire and hang on to and get those spells and stuff that's appropriate for it, well, how am I going to do this? Crack this book open and get your start with it anyway. This will at least give you that high level outline together for what you want to do. Bam! Here's your encounters that are on the water plane and stuff like this. How things interact and stuff on the water plane. How your spells work, all that kind of stuff there, right? How you would write your adventure for that particular plane. All that stuff is here for you to use.
Yeah, and I'd contend that the DM's job is hard enough. I mean, if he's got he's got his hands full. If he's got a bunch of high level adventures that are plane hopping and stuff, and I'd happily take the rules as they are, the entirety of them for an individual plane, and just use that, and then figure out what doesn't work or what I want to change, because right, it's already going to be hard enough, right, and complex enough to deal with those characters without having to create the encounter tables, without having to build out a section on, here's how you survive in here, here's how it affects your magic items and your spells, based on the spell school and all of these other things. And, hey, you're in the ethereal and now you encounter a basilisk on the ethereal and, those kinds of things. I think it's, for example, in the ethereal plane, you encounter a ghost natively in there. Its ability to age isn't nearly as potent. As I recall, it's 1d4, and that might be a function of time passing at a 10 times rate. But basically, it gives you a whole lot of guidelines and a whole lot of stuff that you wouldn't have necessarily thought of until the situation came up with the characters. And then at that point, you're kind of stuck and you have to figure it out, make a table ruling and document that. I'd much rather use something like this for the individual.
Something's already been created for it. Yeah, your consistency is right here for you. Yeah, you can make things and adjust it, but
yes, almost nobody's going to get use out of the entirety of this book, but there's pretty much guaranteed something that you can use at some point.
Talking about magic on the plane of water, here's a nice bit of artwork. This would be a combination of water and earth and air, because you got all three elements right here, maybe,
Right.
So maybe there is your portal to the elemental plane of water right there. Astral plane, this is another one that I definitely specifically wanted to mention, because you have spells in the player's handbook that can get you there. Of course, there are higher level spells, so it isn't low level people that are going to end up being there, right? But you have the option of getting there straight out of the player's handbook. I need something to help me cover it. Bam, here we go. Right? If it's the only thing I use out of this book is the ethereal and the astral parts of it, then it was well worth whatever you spend on it, right? Because actually, my copy was gifted to me because it's an orange spine book and I was collecting them. But
yeah,
and one of my friends that owned a game store said, "Well, you want a copy of it here?" Well, great, thanks. Of course, he's already got all his copies. He's not giving away his original Deities and Demigods. I tried.
yeah.
Right, and the description of the description of the astral plane here is longer than the description of the elemental plane of water. I don't know if you noticed that, because I guess add more to it, because even though there is nothing to the astral plane, there's more to it, you know.
Yeah, in a whole lot of different circumstances. And then, of course, the spells and magic items and stuff like that that relate to it in the actual core books. Like astral projection. So, and while they may have just wrote up the spell astral projection at some point, in the player's handbook,
Yeah.
A lot of times they just wrote that up and that asked more or begged more questions than it ended up answering. And then you get a result like this, which attempts to make it understandable because all of that stuff is very confusing. The whole thing about demons and devils, other extraplanar creatures traveling across. It's good to have an idea of how that stuff works and know where individual creatures can and cannot go and why. So even if you just use the framework for this, it's going to help, like you said, with those common occurrences in the game.
I like this, that the plane has precious few native creatures, and the only power that makes his home here from legends and lore, which is the reprint of Deities and Demigods, is Anubis from the Egyptian mythos. Probably wouldn't be a good thing to run into him anywhere, let alone the astral plane. So,
yeah, I think that guy has like 299 hit points or something, and whatever.
Well, just because I give you a list of hit points, it doesn't mean you can kill them.
Yeah, but they're gonna try.
Yes, they are. They're absolutely gonna try. Yeah. What's that meme with the huge squid-like Cthulhu-looking thing there, and two guys are standing on the rock? Hit it with your crossbow, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so good information in here on astral plane, because you can actually get to it and stuff just straight out of the player's handbook without any extra ado. Reaching it by astral projection. The main thing, they definitely give you more detail on your astral cord, the silver cord, which is pretty important as far as astral travel and all that kind of stuff can go. You can freely pass between ethereal in and out of the prime material, but your astral projection has a cable basically that connects it, routes it back to your physical body on the prime material plane. So that's a pretty important piece here.
Yes, pro tip: don't let it get severed.
Right. It's right here in this section. Where am I waving around my mouse here? Let's see, silver cord, yeah, piece of it there. If it's slaying, just all about that piece and what to worry about, and they take care of it, because if it gets cut or severed or whatever, you're irrevocably dead. Your spirit cannot be returned to your corpse by other magical means. And it looks like people falling through
Strange was nice.
Through the astral. Possession and all of that, and how possession works with your silver cord and stuff like this. It's all covered in here. Snapping of a silver cord is disastrous effects. The traveler's astral form dissolves into a plane in 1d10 turns, leaving behind the astral entities of those magical items brought into the plane. Body in the prime material plane perishes, is an irrecoverable except for wishes, of course, because wishes are ultimate power, right? Any magical items that were taken into the plane rot and evaporate with their enchantments gone, save for artifacts, which return to the prime plane with their powers intact. And that's another thing that it talks about on all of these planes too, is artifacts. The fact that artifacts are super powerful, right? Even though your sword may not function a few planes away from it, artifacts just do. And one of the things that's covered in this book, and I like about it, is artifacts interacting and what happens to them on these different planes. And if you use them, what happens to their abilities and stuff that you're using them on these planes, because they're super powerful. Some extra guidance on just how powerful and how broken artifacts are.
Right.
Oh, well, Joe Kaufman says he's got to take a call. You guys going to make this a 2 or 3 part stream? Oh, are we running that long on it? Holy moly. No, I'd only planned on 1 part, but thanks, Joe, for hopping by and giving us a visit and stuff. We may revisit some parts of this as we talk about other parts of the game at some point or another, too. Maybe when we'll do a stream on artifacts, we'll revisit this book and talk specifically about the artifacts.
Right.
Work on this particular book. Yeah. Only have 1 soul to give to an astral creature. I have 2 if I brought both shoes with me. Yes. Physical travel in the astral plane. They did explain it to that. Your astral color pools. We talked about the different color pools. Right. Gateways to the mirrored alternate prime material planes and first layers of the outer planes appear as 2-dimensional pools of rippling colors. In your ethereal plane, you had the curtain. Here you've got a pool that you can enter, which brings new ideas to B1, if you're familiar with B1, and the vats that had all the different liquids and stuff in them. With this book, you can maybe turn 1 or 2 of those into a transport to an alternate dimension. That would be kind of cool. But
yeah, and it's another neat concept, that probably wouldn't occur to you naturally.
Thank you, Joe, for stopping by. Loves these delves. I love them too. Yeah. All right. What is this here? Stolomachus did not like my double shoe pun. They get worse, trust me. Yeah. Alrighty. Astral plane survival in the astral plane and how you can interact with it. Right, breathing. Time passes so slowly in the astral plane that neither astral nor physical travelers feel the need to breathe. Okay. Astral body cannot be affected by attacks at work through the respiratory system of the target. So you're immune to cloud kill spells, fogs of ingested poison, right? But are not protected from Gorgon breath or insinuated poison, because those they're not. It's not really that kind of breath. It's a different kind of. It's a magical attack as opposed to something physical, right? Same thing of food or drink. Neither physical nor astral forms have any need to eat or drink while in this plane. About 300 subjective years must pass before the travelers feels hungry. Food and drink are often brought to the astral, but only for use in the planes at the end of the journey. What this makes me think of, and we talked about Lovecraft earlier on, was Howard Carter going to Mars and stuff, astrally traveling there basically in his dream state, right?
Right. And I don't think we fully touched on the time here, but with the astral plane, it's the slowest of the planes, and it's I thought it was 1,000 to 1. That is what I wanted to
Let's see,
remember.
It's right here. Time flows at the same rate
But it's
in the known planes, but the effects of time slow down in the astral plane to the point where they almost stop completely. This means that a viewer at one of the color pools does not witness a world frozen in time, but one of which time passes at the same rate as for the viewer. The effects of the passage of time in the astral are slowed by a factor of 365,000 to 1, or 172 days to 1 subjective round. Like, holy moly.
Yeah, and they mention up near the top 1,000 years to 1 day in terms of aging or wear on physical items and stuff.
So it's passing, but it is such a slow rate that it's almost imperceptible. Attacks that affect aging, such as a ghost attack or a staff of withering, have no effect on the astral plane. Right? The amount of time involved to create important changes by such means is so great that these paltry spells have little effect. You want to get away from that ghost? Go astral.
Right.
More talks about movement, astral travel times, right? how to get from one part to another. Encounters in the astral plane are listed and stuff in here as well. Let's see. Astral creatures, right? Here's your different table of astral creatures and stuff. Which ones that you may want to choose for your encounter. And here's an example counter that they give for you that you could use, right? Looking at some of these creatures in there, I don't want to go astral.
Yeah.
Although the Slotty are one of the few creatures I do like out of the feed
Yeah,
forward.
I like them too.
Yeah. That's my excuse to do. That's what my character would do when I'm running a game. Combat in the astral plane is covered. Spells, how spells work in the astral plane. I mean, all the detail that they put into this for you to be able to use. Not that you have to use it all, but it's all in there. The levels of detail and stuff. What magic items work and how they work. Weapons are reduced by 1+ to hit and damage. Weapons that have particular effects against astral creatures retain their pluses. Right. So it's all written out in here. What happens with your player character's abilities and stuff that are in the astral plane. Definitely wanted to focus on this a little more than some of the other ones because, again, your player characters are more likely to go astral than anything else or ethereal. And highlighting, right? Movement in the astral plane is determined by intelligence. Until a monk reaches 10th level, his normal intelligence is used. Upon reaching 10th level, which grants 18 intelligence against mind blast attacks, the monk can move as if he has an 18 intelligence. Fighting abilities are not affected by this gain in intelligence. So the monk being a being that kind of what's a good word for it? He doesn't actually interact on this astral level or anything like this, but just due to his nature, he's able to handle it better, I guess you could say, than other player characters. So nice, interesting extra information for use for your player characters when they want to go there. Features of the astral plane, right? To talk about Get Yankee. That seems to be like everybody's favorite out of the Fiend Folio. I don't know why. They were just me. I think they're a little overpowered for that particular creature, but then again, they are able to travel around the astral plane. They should be a little high powered, right?
Right.
Here's the description of the outer planes. Now, planes of power, since they are the homes of the most powerful extraplanar beings in the known planes of existence, mixture of elements that support rich diversity of life, often but not always similar to life on the prime material planes, right? So these are your planes of the gods and the demons and devils and stuff, where you would go, if your character perishes permanently, he may end up on the plane of whichever deity and stuff he worships or whatever, or at the very least, his alignment plane kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, and I like the alignments here because it's a good example of sort of the way the alignments shape the entirety of the world. Right. It's not alignments aren't and pardon the phrase or whatever, but alignments aren't just a social construct or whatever. Yeah. They actually govern everything that happens in the world's universe. And then this gives you an example of what influences might be present that drive sort of those alignments through the world. So a bunch of these gods and stuff don't directly interface with the characters on any given world. Like you're not gonna in the world of Greyhawk, typically you're not gonna be traveling around and you're gonna find Zeus or something like that. But that doesn't mean that
Zeus would be the only one that would be explainable as to why he's on the prime material plane, because he's getting a little randy again, right? Yeah.
yeah. Exactly.
Every problem that happened to the Greeks was because Zeus got bored and went down to Earth.
Yeah, yeah, for the most part, but it does show you how these things can influence the world, and you can look
Yeah.
at the gods of the world as being um, just part of that individual world, and just a set that's outside, and that falls under the entire influence of of the actual major gods that you find in deities and demigods, for example.
And here we go with here are the 17 known outer planes, right? There's a nice little sentence there that says these are the known outer. That doesn't mean there aren't any more. You're the game master. You make up what you want. You've got extra planes out there in addition to these. Add them to it. But just these are the
Right.
known. This is the ones that they've at least enumerated for you. You can use any of them, all of them, none of them, however else you want to, right? Now, how they got to Olympus, the Dreamer's Plane, home of the Greek and Elvish pantheons. How did they get Olympus to be an Elvish pantheon? I don't know. Maybe just the alignment. I don't know. I wouldn't think Elvish to be for me, but I would.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that is kind of bizarre. I
Yeah.
would see Elf to be, more Gladsheim or something like that.
Right. No, just
Yeah.
the nature of where that particular mythology came from.
Yeah, so you actually did, after I said you might not find a mistake in this because it's so dense, I believe that's a mistake.
Could be, or that was just their idea. Yeah.
Right. Zeus should kill all of the elves.
Yeah. I'll cut off that plane from existence and they wither and die, right?
Yeah.
And here's another one of those graphical representations of the possibilities, right?
Right.
Because even the outer planes themselves have several levels of planes, some of them, several levels of planes in amongst them.
Yeah, and this is actually the only attempt I know of to, at least in first edition, to actually go through these and assign names to the layers and stuff like that, which is pretty neat.
Sure. The 9 hills, for example, gives you the different names of the 9 hills, right? And they made great use of that in subsequent editions of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
With tieflings, and then what was it? The went right out of my head. The name of the Avernus, right? Everybody's got to go to Avernus and fight all them and drive cars around in Avernus. And
yeah, and as we were talking about, this is one of those books that was reproduced throughout different versions. Not in 2e, but 2e's like warm milk. I mean, you can drink it, but why would you, right? But 3e reproduced it, 4e reproduced it, and of course 5e, like you just mentioned, uses some of those ideas.
Ooh.
And
Gonzalo asks a question: can you send your astral self to the prime material plane?
Well, hopefully you can return. So usually when you're doing astral travel, it's a projection of yourself. You can kind of think of it as a sort of out of body experience,
and it's tied
yeah,
to the prime material with that silver cord, right?
Right. So as long as that doesn't sever, you would essentially be able to return. If it is severed, then I think it's something like you fall into a coma that only a full wish can restore, or something, or maybe it's permanent death.
Yeah, you're basically killed. Now, your astral projection can be sent somewhere else to another plane.
Right, by the rules of by the rules of travel and how they interconnect in those diagrams and in the description.
The plane shift spell grants little control over the part of the plane the caster arrives in. While this does not matter in the amorphous inner ethereal and astral planes, widely varying natures of the outer planes makes random placement rather unpleasant. Good, yeah. Spells usually guided by a basic idea of where the caster wants to go in that planar levels. So the drop-off point is usually not too far off. Yeah, and there's a spell table they got here for the plane shift as to where you wanted to go,
Yeah.
right? How did you get there? All right.
Exactly, and as it mentioned just a little farther up, as I was looking at it, there was, they mentioned that the gate spell is basically a conduit through the astral to one of the outer planes.
Sure.
So that's how you would gate in other creatures, is by using that conduit, and it goes out of its way to mention that it's basically instant travel, and that astral creatures can't actually affect people in the conduits if they're being gated or whatever. So if you gate in, say, a demon from the outer planes, he's not attacked by anything in the astral plane in transit.
No, just because of the nature of how how he moved through. Basically, he's
Yeah.
not necessarily moving through the astral. He's bypassing the astral plane, which can't be bypassed. So it's a kind of a contradiction in how it happens. Right. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Conduit travel has the advantage of bringing the physical body along without a trip into the astral plane. Right. This disadvantage is threefold. The gate must be found in the prime plane. Gates are often guarded, and the terminus location may not be friendly to the traveler.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Where does this gate go? Oh my God, we just gated into the elemental plane of fire.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Oops. Yeah, the conduit travel takes those who enter the conduit and all they wear and carry into the other plane. Travelers cannot break the sides of the conduit to enter the astral plane. Indeed, most travelers are unaware that the astral is traversed in the course of the conduit travel. Right. So they cover all that stuff here with as far as astral travel and stuff goes, and gate spells, because that's something that you have. Movement in the outer planes, how to get around from players. There's borders between them, between the realms. Kind of the level of detail they put into here is exceedingly helpful if you somehow or another need to run a campaign on this stuff.
Yeah.
Encounters in the outer planes are listed, right? How magic operates in the outer planes, right? Chaos planes, happy hunting grounds to Tartarus, includes a random effect on alteration spells. Oops, yeah. Polymorph. Right. Hey, look at this. I was trying to change myself into that big purple ape, but no, instead I am a sheep. Yeah.
Oh.
Let's see. Special cases. Here we go, right? Here's where your power capable of granting such things come into play, right? The wish, limited wish, and alter reality spells are granted by the nearest power capable of granting such a desire. Powers examine these requests more carefully here than in the prime material plane. They deny those spells that would upset their realms. Some powers refuse to grant wishes by travelers in their realms. All right, so there's some options and guidance. Yeah, there's a Judges Guild module called Inferno, set in hell. You could use the 9 hells as a guide. Yes, sure. Right. So, yeah. Let's see. North of the Rockies. In a prime material plane, maybe your astral form operates on a strictly observational level without being able to physically interact. Sure. I think the only thing I could say with this is the astral plane just looks like some gray void. You probably have to get close to the border or whatever to be able to actually, like we were talking about earlier, travel around astrally and spy on everything that you could see astrally.
Right.
Find familiar. That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Casting. Of course, what first level wizard would be able to go to one of these dimensions, cast his Find Familiar, and bring that familiar back with him? Probably not very many of them.
No.
You would have had to have lost your other familiar first, and that is extremely hazardous to a magic user. But here we go. Here is a nice, quick little adjustment to your table for finding familiars on the outer planes. Non-power level denizens of the outer planes are considered to be monsters, thus charmed monsters, as well as the alteration speak with monsters, works against these beings. Right? Even though they may be a humanoid in form, they're still considered monsters, right? Beings of power are not as dependent on their physical form, so the druidic spell Finger of Death is useless against them, though it may function against their lesser minions. Because, well, yes, you're going to go to Hades and do Finger of Death, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and this
Some
is
of these
just
things are
another
not going to
example.
turn out well for you. Yeah.
No, right. And this is just an example of how they how they organized all of these in the same way. So if you look at, one of the categories of planes and then one of the planes itself, that's a good guide for understanding how the book is laid out. Because for me, especially in the early days, it wasn't readily apparent until I sort of took that approach.
Sure. Listen, what else can we talk about here as far as the outer planes and stuff goes? Necromantic magic has no effect on the natives of outer planes in their home plane. Similar spells that do affect the natives of the plane are used by those natives. These spells also affect travelers from the prime astral and inner planes. So, examples. Pit Fiend in his home plane of the Nine Hills cannot be affected by a cause light wounds or destruction spell. By the same token, such a creature cannot receive a heal spell or be raised while in that plane. Ooh, could be bad to be killed on your own plane, right? Whereas if you kill a demon or whatever on the prime material plane, all it does is send it back to its native plane, right? So there's player characters, how their abilities and stuff are affected on particular planes, right? Turning undead and stuff like this are all part of all of this. Right. Spell crystals, although I do like the tuning fork idea for your planar travel, right? You've got a tuning fork that is attuned to the frequency of the level of the place that you want to go to. I like that idea really well.
Yeah, me too.
Here's some description of like the river Styx. Pretty cool picture there. I think maybe they're talking about the river Styx here since that water is on fire. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Some good art still.
Yeah.
Different specifics about some of these different planes, just because we've got a lot of mythological references and stuff to some of these, so they put more into it. Because a lot of these are based off mythology, right?
Yeah.
I do believe that's it. That's all we had in there.
Yeah.
The extra information about those planes and stuff. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, it was a nice little run through. I mean, we didn't spend a whole lot of time. Well, we spent a lot of time on the stream, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time in going into great detail in any one of those things. So if you're interested in more, I would suggest you pick up a copy of it and look at it yourself and get some ideas and stuff out of it. Right. If you've got player characters that are about that level and they're playing around with these ideas, right, run through and look at it. Look at, especially if you like using monsters that could affect creatures on the ethereal plane and stuff like this. It's a good read for getting information on how to take care of some of that stuff over and above what was listed in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And in the monster manual too for the descriptions. So this was a excellent run back down into another one of the Orange Spine books. We'll be looking at more I'm not sure what the next one we're going to look at. We'll discuss it. But if somebody's got some ideas as to what Orange Spine book they want us to look at next, it's probably not going to be next week, but sooner or later we'll get into another one. Throw some ideas, make some comments, give us some feedback on this stuff, because we look at all of this stuff. We will also want to look at some of the things you guys are interested in as well. I mean, eventually we'll get around to it, but some of you are impatient and you want to see stuff right away, so we'll take that into account as well.
Yeah.
I'm impatient. I want to go back into looking at some more of those Orange Spines because I never had them as a kid. I'm digging a lot of this stuff. May never use any of it, but I'm just reading it. I'm going to strip ideas out of it.
Yeah, and it's a fun read regardless. You know, if you hypothetically have time to do things like read, you know, in a focus setting, you know.
Oh, I do plenty of reading. I'm trying to do more reading at work, but they kind of frown on that kind of thing, so I have to do it at home. But you know,
right.
I'm supposed to be standing there giving a lecture. I can't have my face in a book, so I got to figure something else out, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining me again here on another rundown into this. And unless you got some other parting remarks, I'll go ahead and let you go.
Yeah, no, that's all. And thanks as always for having me. And as always, the pleasure's all mine. You know.
Yeah, did fantastic for chatting at you about all the stuff. And we'll thanks Dungeon Delver for hopping in here and making some comments and stuff too. It's always welcome to have him come join us.
Right.
You know, if anybody knows this stuff like the back of his hand, it's him. All right, well, I'll cut you loose and let you go because, you know, I'm sure they're ripping the paint off the walls of the house or something behind you. So
probably, or maybe worse. Yes.
All
Very
right, thanks for
observant.
joining me there. Good night there, my friend.
Have a good one, man. Thank you.
All right. So thanks a lot for joining us here on the Great Old Ones channel for our run back again into another Orange Spine book. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Leave us some comments. Give us some ideas of some other things that you'd like us to cover and talk about, things that you may be curious about. We'll try and answer questions and stuff as much as we can in the comments. And we'll kick around for another idea for what else to look at in first edition Dungeons and Dragons. Again, we're probably going to end up eventually going over all of the Orange Spine books to maybe include even one day Dragonlance, although it's not a setting I really enjoy, but it was one of the Orange Spine books. So we'll get around to covering all of this stuff here sooner or later, and then we'll do it all over again because we just like talking about this stuff. So thanks again for joining us here on the Great Old Ones channel. Thanks again for all of you watching and commenting, and my supporters. Thanks again for you guys contributing. That's fantastic. I really don't deserve it, but you guys think so. So thank you very much. And we will catch you all next Thursday on the next one, assuming bad stuff doesn't happen. So good night, all.